here's a treat for you. This morning we're in conversation with Yoruba King, His Majesty Oba Dr. Michael Odunayo Ajayi Arowotawaya II. His Majesty became king as the Animo, an ancient historical town in Osun State in 2014. With various qualifications and an honorary doctorate of commerce, Ajayi has worked with various multinational healthcare and pharmaceutical giants across the globe, with several accolades under his belt. In 2017, His Majesty became the first Nigerian monarch to be a guest at the opening bell of the New York Stock Exchange. His Majesty Oba Arowotawaya Foundation has provided full scholarship to deserving but underprivileged students in his sphere of influence, and the vocational school he established offers free training to provide hundreds of women and young people with the skills they need to be self-sufficient. He joins us now to tell us about that and more happening in Nigeria. A very good morning to you, sir, and thank you very much for joining us. We say Gabi Esio.
Gabi Esio.
Gabi Esio. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's a pleasure being here.
Maybe a brief introduction of the Yoruba people of southwest Nigeria.
Okay, the Yoruba people are one of Africa's oldest tribes that have an history dating back to thousands of years from now. And we've always had a monarchy in Yoruba land. And I would say that the Yorubas were one of these races that suffered most when it comes to, the slave trade. So all over the world, you will find Yorubas in Brazil, you will find Yorubas in Cuba, you will find Yorubas in the UK, United States, and practically all over the world. And Yorubas are one of the foremost tribes from Nigeria. Of the three major tribes and 200 other ethnic tribes, the Yorubas are one of the foremost. And we've had this history, long history, well-educated people, enlightened, and the Yorubas are in the southwest of Nigeria, which is Lagos, Ibadan, Osun, Ogun, Oyo, Ondo, and so on, even as far as Kogi State in north central.
And how should we understand kingdoms that exist in southwest Nigeria? You're about one of many kings in Nigeria?
Yes, every king definitely has a kingdom. And you can only be king because there's a land on which you are king over. So, for instance, I am Kabiyesi Elerimo of Erimo land. And our progenitor is Oduduwa. Oduduwa became king and overlord over the entire Yoruba race. And some of the children left Ife, which is the original kingdom, to found other kingdom. So usually the king is a warrior, usually the king is somebody who can go into battle and has conquered a particular land, or is the first person to take possession of a particular land. That's how kings are made. You have given us a brief history, but I'd like for us to expand on it, because every time we talk about African history, sometimes we start with the slave trade and how people were taken out of the continent. But who were the people of this continent before the slave trade? Yes, Africa had a rich history and still has a rich history all over Africa. Not just talking about Yorubas now. There are so many tribes in Africa. We had a history, we had a lifestyle. Our lifestyle was suited to our environment. We knew how to conquer our environment. Most of the herbs that people now use these days were founded in some of these kingdoms, and they are readily available, and they work, and they are very potent. So these people had lived with each other most of the time in peace, without any war. Of course, there will be wars once in a while, but there was that good relationship, that good neighborliness. Africans are their brothers' keepers. Africans get along with other Africans, and they are always willing to offer some help. That is how we were. We had a system of government, for instance, in Yoruba land, in each of the kingdoms, where the king is head. It has a council, which is more like the Senate or the Parliament, who decide on issues. The king sits on cases, adjudicates, to ensure that there's fairness. And the job of the king, essentially, is to protect and promote the welfare of his people, which is essentially what we used to do this and what we are still doing now, before the political system changed.
How has that political system changed the landscape, right? So right now yours is an advisory and a ceremonial role, but how has that disrupted what it is that the kings and queens of the continent had started?
Okay, now with the new political arrangement, the king, as you said, is more of a symbolic head, offering advisory services to the political class. However, to your people, to my people, I'm the spiritual head. So my position is not just the physical, there's a spiritual angle to it, and that is the way it is for every king. So even if it is seen as an advisory position to the government, in reality, to your people, it's a full-time duty, as it was in the past. Because unlike the political class, that there is a tenure of office, maybe 4 years, 5 years, and there's a change of government or so on, in the monarchy, it's a lifetime position, and so your people's problem becomes your problem. And then, so I would say the position hasn't changed much. It has changed in the face of the political incursion, taking some of the responsibility, but nonetheless, the responsibility for the welfare of the people still lies with the king. And in our place, we say Obamewa, Igbamewa, 10 kings, 10 lifetime. So each king is struggling to leave a legacy that will be remembered for good several years thereafter.
Speaking of a legacy that will be remembered for good, when you read about Nigeria or when there's news items from Nigeria, while there's so many good stories to tell, we are also made aware of the insecurity in the country with insurgency groups. We're also made aware of some of the social ills that are plaguing the country. One of them is a recent story that was done by an international news channel, and they were talking about child marriages and how children are taken from their homes and they're married off. And so there's quite a number of things that are being done in the name of tradition, in the name of history. What role then do you as a king play in bringing about change to some of the traditions that we still hold that do not necessarily take us forward as a people, and fostering unity and peace?
Okay, you would notice that these days, most kings that are being installed are learned kings who are exposed, who are enlightened. Unlike in those olden days where the king is just somebody who grew up within the same domain without any formal education and really doesn't know much. These days, the kings are learned and well educated. And as educated kings, what we have been doing, that I have been doing, is to let my people see that certain practices have to stop. And so in my domain, I can say with confidence that there's no issue of early child marriages. And I believe that every king in his domain will be working towards that. Aside that, every other thing that, the modern day requires us to do is what, as king, we are supposed to promote. It's easier for me as a king to speak to my people in the language they will understand, to let them know that these things have negative consequences. Which brings us to the fact that it is the idle hand that the devil uses. So we need to keep our people busy, employed, enlightened, contributing to development in society, to avoid a situation whereby they will continue these practices. Of course, it happens all over Africa. But again, as enlightened kings, it's our duty to ensure that we carry on the message from the government and from ourselves to ensure that all these practices are put to an end. And that we are doing already.
His Majesty, please allow us to take a short break. We're back with more on you after the break. Do stay with us. Hello again. We're in conversation with Yoruba King, His Majesty Oba Dr. Michael Odunayo Ajayi Arowotawaya II. We're also in conversation with Collins Mbo, President of the Nigerian Union of South Africa. Thank you very much, Collins, for joining the conversation. Before we went to the break, His Majesty was talking about some of the practices and traditions and the need for, well, you highlighted that today's kings are much more educated, and so there's things that we need to change about who we are. As a young person taking a look at the monarchy, why is it important that you follow in that tradition, right? You're so exposed and there's so much that has changed, but why is it important to still follow tradition, if you will?
I believe that everything started with tradition, especially in Africa. As much as the colonialism changed everything, but at the end of the day, it's very important that we go back to the roots where it all started from. During the prior colonialism, when there is a situation in a community, we go to the kings to assist in terms of resolving the situation. But these days we use the system of the democratic institutions, which, as we can see, is not really helping much. And the kind of crimes that we see in the communities, in the society this time, wasn't there at that time. I think it's very important that we look into into the traditional aspect, the way they do it before, to see if it's going to help us to eliminate, especially like I'm saying, the crime rate that we have in our society. So it's very important that we do not forget our history, our roots, irrespective of how civilized we are. So that it's very important.
We've always been civilized. His Majesty Oba, I just want to touch on the issue of when you take a look at the quality of life of some of the people on the ground on the continent, they will bemoan the fact that you have some leaders that take money outside of the continent, or they're involved in bribery, etc. That is the negative story that keeps on coming out of the continent. How do we begin to change the quality of life of people? You mentioned idle hands are the devil's playground, and making sure that this continent that is most populous with young people, those people help the continent instead of burning the continent.
I'm an advocate of returning power to the monarchy, because the kings are the closest people to their people. Grassroots. All crimes are local. All issues eventually get to the grassroots. And so if we want a change in the existing lifestyle, which is a situation where we are coming from a traditional setting, we are trying to modernize, trying to absorb foreign culture, and then we are caught up in the middle. Neither good in this and then leaving this. So we are just in the middle of everything. If power is given back, there must be a constitutional rule for kings in every country. Once there's a constitutional rule, part of that rule will involve, supporting with crime management, because most crimes can be nipped in the bud before they are committed. It's a difficult thing trying to be retroactive after something has happened. It's actually better for it to be prevented. And how do you prevent that? You need to understand the people, understand why. There's always an intent. What was the reason why people want to commit this particular crime or do this particular thing? This is where the traditional rulers come in. In those olden days, up to now, we still hold court. We sit down, we resolve issues, land issues, issues between two families and so on. And everybody knows everybody. So in Africa, we are our brother's keepers. When you see a little child doing something wrong, whether it's your child or not, you punish the child, you warn the child, you look after the child as if it was yours. That is something that is now missing, that we need to bring back. So we need to strengthen the traditional institution to make them more supportive of the existing political arrangements.
Collins, the King talks about you are your brother's keeper. You were based in South Africa. What has your experience of being in the country been?
I'd like to say it's been a wonderful experience, I must say. I must say that South Africans are very warm people. Talking from experience, I've been here for the past 16 years. And I've been able to go to school here, I've been able to marry here, I've been able to do my business and all that in this country. So South Africans are quite warm, welcome people, but that doesn't remove the fact that there are certain elements also who are hostile to my community, the migrant community in general. But looking at it, you find out that it's just the minority, not the large population. You understand? So it's been a good experience being in this country. Like I said, we were welcomed with open arms, and irrespective of the challenges, of which I believe that if we can sit down together as brothers and sisters, irrespective of where we are migrating from, sit down to discuss what is the problem. What problems are you experiencing from the migrant community? And then to the migrant community, what experience are you experiencing from the host community? And we sit down together and discuss on how to deal with them. As the president of Nigerian Union South Africa, I'm here today also to state that I am willing, I'm representing the entire Nigerian community of South Africa, that we are willing to work hand in glove with the host community, to see how we can assist this lovely country which has given us hope, which has given us our destiny, to progress in terms of economy, politically, and otherwise. So it's been a great experience living in this country, and I'd like to thank every South African, starting from the president and to the ordinary person in the street, for giving us that opportunity.
Your Majesty, what does a united Africa look like?
A united Africa will be very prosperous. You would agree with me that the best resources all over the world lies here in Africa. How can you then explain why the son of the butcher is now eating bones without meat? The resources are here. Africa has vast resources. The issue is that Africans need to believe in themselves. Africans need to trade with themselves. The level of intra-African trade is ridiculously low. There's no reason why we cannot trade with ourselves. Nigeria is a population of 200 million. That's a huge market for anybody who has items to sell. There's no reason why we should. And I think that we need to strengthen inter-community relationship, individual relationship, outside the political relationship. You will notice that the AU and several Pan-African parliaments and so on have had a lot of agreements on paper. Are these agreements able to come to light? That's the problem. So, but now if we improve the like link my kingdom to another kingdom here, which is why I came to attend the Zulu King's coronation, link another kingdom to each other, we are the same. There are things that are available in Nigeria, needed in South Africa, things in South Africa needed in Nigeria. We need to just increase and improve and believe in ourselves. The moment we believe in ourselves and we begin to relate with ourselves, we realize that we really don't need any external support. We deal externally as a body, as an African body, rather than as individual. There are countries in Africa that the population is less than 1 million. If everybody begins to sign bilateral trade agreement with other countries, they will be at a disadvantage. But when we are going as a body, an African body, with that strength, with that population and that background, is a huge advantage. That's what we need to do.
Do we love each other? Do we see that? Do we see that vision? I mean,
we love each other.
If you go down the history pages, please allow me. So, if we go down the history pages, we are made to understand that even with the slave trade, right, that just exacerbated things. But there were also people from the continent who were selling people from their continent, who were selling their own. And some have argued that that has, well, plagued us to present-day Africa. Is there something to be said about that?
Okay. The devil, going spiritual now, the devil is a very deceptive concept. Let me not say individual. So anybody would fall into that trap. They are being offered things. Why entice somebody to sell somebody? Where did it start from? Who encouraged it? Nobody will go ahead and enslave another person. Why leave another continent to enslave somebody from another continent? Most of the continents that are big these days were built from the energy, from the blood, from the sweat of blacks. So yes, some blacks sold fellow blacks, but they were enticed and deceived into doing that, being offered things in exchange for that. That does not say we don't love each other. We love each other. Our skin is the same color. We are the same. So I don't think there's any reason why we should think otherwise. We have brothers now who are in America, who are Americans. We have brothers in Brazil. We have people who ordinarily were children of kings, and they are in Cuba because their forefathers were taken to Cuba. But again, we need to get out of that problem. Now, this is 400 years after slave trade. We can't keep being worried about that. What is the way forward for us now? The way forward, I think, is part of what we are doing today, is to ensure and encourage inter-community relationship, individual relationship. Let's leave the differences that we have. Let's begin to focus on the areas where there's some unity for us to be able to progress together. We are able to do more when we join hands. Nobody can, in our place, they say, if you take a stick of broom, it can't do much. It can't kill any mosquito. But when you have a bunch of broom, you can do a lot with it. That's what Africa needs to. That's why I said Africa needs to believe in themselves. The problem is that we've been made not to believe in ourselves. We need to believe in ourselves. God has made all of us same level kind of fingers, same head, same ears, same brain. Maybe better brain. But what are we doing? Civilization started in Africa. You are aware of that. So what happened thereafter?
Just in closing, please, Your Majesty, if you could just, in South Africa we say kisereto or isthakazelo, when you give the praises to your people or the people that came before you. If you can please just bless us with a Yoruba sereto, if you will.
Okay. Èmi aláìlúà ọba ẹlẹ́rìmọ̀ tìlú ẹ̀rìmọ̀ ó gbàdúrà fún gbogbo yín pé á dáa fún yín ẹ ṣoríire ìbànújẹ́ ò ní jẹ́ ti yín o Ọlọ́run á wà pẹ̀lú yín àwọn alálẹ̀ á máa gbè yín ẹ ní ṣiṣẹ́ ẹ ní ṣẹ̀ṣẹ̀ gbé iṣẹ́ tí mo wá ṣe ń bì Ọlọ́run ló rán mi kọ́lọ́run ràn mí lọ́wọ́ ẹ má ṣe ṣekúṣe o ẹ má borúkọ wa jẹ́ ẹ rántí ọmọ ẹni tẹ́yìn ṣe. You want to hear that in English?
This is Zulu. We say this is Zula Sitoligwa, but I'm so curious. If you don't mind.
I'm blessing. You know, as king, I told you this is spiritual too. I'm blessing everybody, including you and including all Nigerians or Yorubas, that God Almighty and our ancestors, because we believe in our ancestors will support, and that I encourage you all to be of good behavior, so that because you must remember the son of whom you are. You want to protect the family name. Wherever you are in the world, always remember. And I'm praying for this, our beautiful host. God will bless you too. God will open greater doors to you and everybody watching us. It is well with you.
Amen. I usually hear it's said, Ashe, is it when you're
Ashe,
done?
okay. Ashe is the equivalent of amen in Yoruba, Ashe. But Ashe is even more potent because it's like emphatic. Ashe. When I say it is well with you, they say Ashe. Exactly.
With everything you have said,
yes.
Ashe.
Ashe, thank you very much. God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Collins, for also joining us. And that was His Majesty Oba Dr. Michael Odunayo Ajayi Arowotawaya II, a Yoruba king from Nigeria. More news for you when we return.